There is a bronze statue standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out at the North Atlantic. But it is not a hero or a king. It is a bird, specifically the Great Auk, a flightless, penguin-like creature that was once found in the millions, but is now reduced to this single, silent monument. If you stand behind it, and you really should, you will see exactly what the statue is staring at. About 10 miles out to sea, a sheer vertical rock rises out of the water like a fortress called Eldey. Through a telephoto lens, the top of that island looks white, which you might mistake for snow, but it is not snow, and we will get to what that white stuff actually is later. But first, you need to understand the ground beneath your feet. This is Route 425, Nesvegar. Locals just call it 425. It is a loop of geological violence known as the Atlantic Sentinel. We are not merely visiting a location here. We are entering a zone where the planetary crust is at its absolute thinnest, and where the tectonic plates of North America and Eurasia are actively ripping the Earth apart. The atmosphere here is defined by a violent stillness. The ground appears static, but if you pause, you realize it vibrates with deep pressure, rerouting the plumbing under your feet that turns the coastline into a smoking ruin. Let's look at the field mechanics of this place, starting with the name itself. Reykjanes, which literally translates to smoky point. It earns that title not from fire, but from steam, salt haze, and the earth venting pressure through a fractured coastline. And yes, the most infamous steam source is right across the road. Gunnuhver, the mud pot people swear is a prison for a human spirit. We tell that nightmare in a separate chapter on IcelandExplained.com, so if you want the ball of yarn story, look for that episode. But don't mix the stories. Right now, we stay with the ocean. And if you came here for the aurora, understand what this place really is. A wide, black stage with almost no light pollution, a brutal horizon line, and a wind that will try to pry the tripod out of your hands like it owes it money. On the right winter night, the sky doesn't glow here. It performs. Light is the master of this landscape. In summer, the sun hangs high and relentless, stripping away every shadow until there is no place to hide from its glare. Yet even then, the Atlantic air rushes in to crown the land with clouds, the peninsula's constant grace and its curse. It is a place that feels vast and flat despite the jagged stone, and when winter comes, it turns bone dry and hostile as the darkness shuts tight like a closing door. Just up the hill from the steam fields stands the lighthouse, Reykjanesviti, a white concrete tower on Bæjarfell that looks solid and permanent. But that solidity is a lie. The first lighthouse, a beautiful octagonal stone tower built in 1878, was destroyed because the engineers made the classic mistake of trusting the ground. They built it on the cliff of Valaknokkamul, but the ocean ate the mountain underneath it, and 30 years later, the cracked tower had to be blown up with dynamite before it fell into the sea. The current lighthouse is a survivor of that attrition, standing in a place where the wind is not a weather event, but a physical assault. A force locals respect with the Icelandic car door rule. Hold it with 2 hands, or the gust will fold it forward against the fender. The wind here carries a payload of suspended glass and salt. If your lens fogs, do not wipe it with your shirt. You're not cleaning it. You're sanding it. This relentless erosion brings us to the cliff itself. Valaknokkamul, a name that decomposes into Falcon Peak and rubble, signifying the total victory of the sea over the stone. This is where the soundscape changes from the hiss of wind to a low-frequency rumble you feel in your boots before you properly hear it. It is the sound of the boulder ridge, massive one-ton spheres of basalt that the Atlantic swell lifts and rolls over each other, the sound of the earth chewing on itself. The landscape is so alien, so stripped of hope, that Black Mirror filmed the episode Crocodile here, using the black rock and gray sky to mirror a crumbling morality. And then you notice the punchline this place tells about humans. Not a plaque, not a memorial. 2 red keyboards sitting out here like a prop abandoned by a bored god. They are the Volcano Man keyboards from Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga, left on the cliff as a souvenir for people who want to stand on the edge of the habitable world and pretend it's a music video. They're real. They're weathered. The wind keeps trying to steal them, the salt keeps trying to sand them down, and somehow they're still here, bright and ridiculous against black rock, proof that we cope with apocalypse by turning it into a chorus. The ocean doesn't just destroy the land, it sets traps for the things that live on it, which, for example, is evident down at the water's edge at a pool called Brimketil, just behind the corner, a few kilometers away from here. The name means surf cauldron, and while the brochures show a picture that looks like a natural hot tub, do not be deactivated by the marketing. It is a cold water erosion feature carved by the violence of the sea. Sneaker waves regularly scour the viewing platform, and the rock rim is coated in black algae as slippery as ice. So if you fall in, the hydraulics will pull you down and grind you against the sharp lava in what locals essentially consider a kill box. If you want to witness this violence without the crowd, you can hike 4 kilometers across the flat lava to Hafnarberg, the introverts' cliff, where you get the same dramatic bird colonies and ocean fury, but with absolute solitude. In nesting season, the cliffs don't feel empty. They feel occupied, as if the air itself has a body, full of hovering fulmars and sudden sharp cries. But outside that season, the same ledges look abandoned, and the silence becomes part of the threat. The ocean's strange economy echoes here too. Just as the wreck of the Jamestown built the church at Hvalsnes, its scavenged timber forms the floorboards of the historic houses right behind you. But the ocean takes more than it gives, which brings us back to the start, back to that bronze bird, the Great Auk. On July 3, 1844, Jón Brandsson, Sigurdur Ísleifsson, and Ketill Kettilsson rowed out to that white rock, Eldey, and for a small commission, they strangled the last breeding pair on Earth and crushed the single egg under a boot. That was it. The end of a species, a banal, paid-for murder. Across the road, that other story is still screaming under steam and twine. But here, the cliff tells the quieter kind of tragedy. So when you stand at Valaknokkamúl, behind that bronze statue, and you look through your telephoto lens at the white island of Eldey, remember that the white color isn't snow. It is a colony of northern gannets, tens of thousands of them, the cousins who survived. The extinct bird stands on the cliff, staring forever at the living ones, separated by 10 miles of lethal water and nearly 200 years of silence, while the lighthouse beam cuts through green curtains overhead, sweeping over the living white on Eldey and the dead bronze at your back, indifferent to which species survives the night. A dead bird in bronze. A living white colony 10 miles out. Lethal water between them, and nearly 2 centuries of silence. That is the whole peninsula in one image. Survival on one side, extinction on the other. If you want the bone under the postcard instead of the Instagram garbage, subscribe on YouTube, find us on every podcast platform, share this, hit the like button, and leave a comment before the algorithm feeds you another plastic waterfall. It is a filter. Nothing more polite than that. For the unspoken articles, the raw source data, and the vetted gear we actually trust, the Diagnostic Hub lives at icelandexplained.com. The link in the description is your sanity tax, the fuel that keeps this operation independent in a landscape of sold-out narratives. We don't do corporate fluff. We do the work properly, and we expect a fair trade. The Buy Me a Coffee tip jar is there for direct support, because independence costs money, and vague appreciation does not pay for anything. Humanity has tested this, repeatedly. If you want the rest of the chapters from this region, they're collected in the Reykjanes playlist at icelandexplained.com. That includes the Rift Trinity, the chapter where Bridge Between Continents, the Stampar Crater Row, and Stora Sandvik Beach stop behaving like tourist stops and become one continuous wound in the crust. And if you want the industrial myth turned into milky blue luxury, that is our Blue Lagoon episode, a sharp pivot from paid extinction at the peninsula's edge to industrial waste dressed as serenity. These are not recommendations. They are the next files in the system. This is Iceland Explained. We deliver the autopsy. We serve the marrow. We provide the perspective the horizon is trying to hide. A story, not a guide.